Hi, my name is Liz Rachel Walker, and I'm very honored that my manuscript, the Dieppe Letters, was selected to receive the Unhanged Arthur Award in 2020 for Best Unpublished Crime Manuscript. Thank you so much to Crime Writers of Canada for offering the Arthur Ellis Awards, and thank you to Dundurn Press for sponsoring the Unhanged Arthur. I'm delighted, and it means a great deal to me that the manuscript for my first novel was able to receive this recognition and encouragement. This is the award that I received. It's fabulous, and I'm really grateful. The Dieppe Letters is set in London, England, 2 months after the Dieppe raid in 1942. So it's not a battle story, it's set on the home front. And I wanted to write a story set during World War II because both my parents and my husband's parents grew up in England during World War II. So I was interested in that time period for that reason. I was born and raised in Canada though, so I wanted the story to have a Canadian angle. And I also wanted to write about women in wartime because they've been less written about. And my historical research really led me to Dieppe. The Dieppe raid was an Allied raid on the northwest coast of France on August 19th, 1942. And the landing force was largely Canadian, about 5,000 Canadian soldiers. And tragically, it was a disaster. It turned out to be Canada's deadliest day of the war. And I discovered a mystery in the historical record about whether or not the Germans actually knew in advance about the raid. Is that why it was so deadly? I also discovered in the historical research process some amazing experiences that women had during the war. So I put these ideas together, I started blending them to come up with a plot and characters. I think the biggest challenge of writing the book was coming up with a storyline that was consistent with the historical evidence. So I wanted to honor the history and honor the soldiers who went to Dieppe by sticking as close as possible to the real facts of the event. But the historical evidence is contradictory, so it took quite some time just to figure out what the best evidence was, and then I created the plot within those details. I think also because I felt like a detective as I was reading about Dieppe, that was why I decided to write the story as a detective story. Another challenge of writing the book was keeping in mind multiple audiences. I wanted anyone who is interested in reading about the Dieppe raid to be able to pick up the book and immerse themselves in 1942, regardless of how much they knew beforehand about Canadian or British World War II history. But I also wanted mystery readers to feel like I'd met the expectations that they had of a mystery, of a detective story. So my approach was to create a main character, Detective Inspector Andrew Hampton, who works for Special Branch, part of Scotland Yard. And because of that job, he has access to classified information that most people didn't have access to at that time. And he has to solve the murder of an MI5 officer, and in order to do it, he comes in contact with people and evidence that relate to the Dieppe raid, and he basically has to learn about the raid to try to solve the murder. He also, in order to solve the murder, needs to decide whether or not to trust a beautiful refugee with a mysterious past. I'd like to thank my husband, Kevin Bartlett, for his wonderful support of me during the writing of this book and for keeping me company on the shortlist with a crime manuscript of his own. I'd like to thank my parents, Angela and Keith Walker, and Kevin's parents, Jean and John Bartlett, for sharing stories with me about rationing of food or what it was like in a musty cellar during an air raid, and for being open to my questions in general about what it was like to grow up during that time. So thank you very much again. It's a real honor.